Guys, I want to get your perspective on some of the major storylines of this season. We know LeBron James got one for the land this June, historic NBA Finals performance. Now, the question is, does LeBron have anything left to prove? And if you ask LeBron, he started bringing up Michael Jordan this summer, so I guess he's trying to give himself something more to prove. What do you think?
I think that LeBron should just be satisfied with what he's achieved because no one else can do what he's done. And he doesn't have to compare himself to anybody. He's made a remarkable name for himself and has had an incredible career. He should be satisfied with that.
Just try to get as many chips as you possibly can. Individually, he's accomplished pretty much everything.
Right, right. Well, they look good so far this season. People who just gave it to the Warriors need to watch some Cleveland games. And that is what I want to ask you is when Kevin Durant picked the Warriors, there were a lot of people who just gave them the championship. What do you think of this team as it's put together and Kevin's decision to go there?
Well, they have to prove themselves over a season. They have to survive all the injuries. They got a lot on their plate.
Right.
They should be quiet and just go about it day to day. Because when you start talking about what's going to happen in the future, that doesn't make any sense.
No.
Festus, Ezeli, Harrison Barnes, Andrew Bogut, like three pivotal, key guys for that team on that championship run. Who's going to fill those shoes? I mean, you added KD, but, those guys were very key parts for that championship team. We'll see.
It's going to be interesting when Harrison Barnes and Andrew Bogut go back there.
And Harrison Barnes. Shout out to Harrison Barnes, man. He's playing well, bro.
You got to give him some credit because Tracy has not been easy on him, and he is showing up. I do want to also talk about James Harden, who's averaging 32 points, 13 assists this season. He was asked by The Vertical who the best player is right now. Harden responded, best point guard or best player? Michael Lee, The Vertical, said either, and Harden said, I am. Tracy, do you agree?
Well, he's a hell of an offensive talent. If he gets his team up with the elite teams in this league, I don't know how you could deny it. 32 and
you're putting him at number one overall of all the players playing right now.
No. I said if he gets his team up with the elite teams in this league, you have to.
Big if.
That is a big if because they don't play any defense.
Right? You got to win a championship too to be in that conversation, right?
Right. You got to.
It's a new year,
and you have to have. You've got to be able to influence the game at both ends of the court. At the offensive end and at the defensive end. And a lot of guys, they think all they have to do is score now. And I think that's a fallacy. You got to be able to do something at the other end of the court.
Great offensive talent, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about greatest players, it's thrown around sometimes somewhat casually. I actually wanted to get your take on that. There's just this sort of, Michael Jordan, greatest player of all time. You have the scoring record. You have 6 championships. You had 19 All-Star appearances, 6 MVPs. Where are you on this?
Bill Russell has 11 rings.
Okay, so that's your number one of all time?
8 championships in a row, 11 rings. Come on. It's about winning the game. It's not about this stat or that stat or you made an incredible dunk. It's about all the success that you had, and it's over a period of time. And those guys did it. Other guys have to prove themselves.
All right. Well, that's the final word. Kareem says it. Then that's where we got to end. Bill Russell, there you go. Kareem, thank you so much for joining us today. Tracy wants to shoot a shot. He's afraid you were going to block it there, but Oh, yeah. See? Over Kareem. There you go. Before we go, I do want to send our condolences to former Bullet star Greg Ballard's family. He passed away at the age of 61. Those Bullets teams, those were the teams I first fell in love with growing up in Maryland. So it's a tough loss. 61 is very young. So condolences to everyone in Washington. And thank you very much for joining us. We're so thrilled that Kareem is with us. And not just because of his basketball greatness, but also his contributions to the greater American conversation. And that is where we're going to start today. I know a lot of you are watching right now because a basketball show is a nice way to escape from politics. And trust me, we are going to talk a lot of basketball. I mean, Kareem is here. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about this seismic thing that just happened in our country. Because sports and athletes do not operate in some separate space from the rest of us. They're not little Lego figures you just put in a drawer when you're not playing with them. They are affected by and react to the same world the rest of us do. And make no mistake, they are influencers of American culture way beyond the courts or the fields that they play on. Now, Kareem has experienced that firsthand. In fact, he's experienced so much firsthand, which is really in concert with what I keep coming back to here. Whether you supported Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, this election was so all-encompassing, and last night was such a tidal wave that it's easy to drown in the right now of it all. But the truth is that history is long. Perspective is important. Sometimes things seem amazing and then they fade. And sometimes things seem impossible and then they get better. Just ask Cubs fans. Or we can just ask Kareem. Remember, he was part of those great John Wooden UCLA teams during the late 1960s, one of the most turbulent times in our country's history. In 1968, he was part of the effort to boycott the U.S. Olympic team over the treatment of Black Americans. And while the boycott didn't materialize, he didn't end up going to Mexico City. In the early 70s, he dazzled us in Milwaukee, changing his name to match his Muslim beliefs as he played right smack in the middle of the heartland. And while the country went through the upheaval of the Nixon resignation. And then in the late 70s and 80s, as a Laker, he was part of some of the greatest teams in NBA history, as once again, the country around him completely reshaped itself over and over again. Which is why, Kareem, I want to start with you. Given everything you have done, everything you have seen, can you give us perspective on everything over these past 24 hours?
Well, we just have to realize that, there are ups and downs in all of this. And there are times when you feel really good about what's happening, and then there are times when you don't feel too good about what's happening. And we're going through those kind of times right now.
What's it been like for you in the conversations you've had with people?
There's a lot of disappointment
Yeah.
in the decision. But what can we do? I think as people, we have to unite, stay together, and try to make the best of this situation.
Yeah.
And sports is always a part of that, because there are people who are elated today, too. We have to remember that. Half our country feels that way. And we talk sometimes in cliches about how sports unites people. And sports uniting people, it doesn't fix everything, right? I mean, some things are more serious than that. But you also have to say that when the Cubs fans are out celebrating 5 million strong on the shores of Lake Michigan, and when the people in Cleveland were celebrating in that parade after the Cavaliers won, there were Republicans and Democrats mixed in those celebrations, and they were able to come together.
Exactly. And, look here in Los Angeles, how unified we were when the Raiders won the Super Bowl, when the Lakers had won, when the Dodgers won in 81, and then look what happened, the Rodney King riots.
Right.
I mean, we have the potential for both. And, how do we move forward trying to keep it in a positive mode? That's really what we have to work out.
What is the connection between athlete and the presidential candidate, like LeBron going up there and endorsing Hillary? Is there a relationship prior to him going up there, or his people reaches out and just, how is that? How is that connection?
Well, I'm only imagining this now because I don't know how they made their relationship or how it started.
Right.
But, for example, in my case, I went to the White House for a day of jazz back in the 90s when Bill was president. And I got to meet the Clintons and developed a friendship. And it went from there. But it all depends. And sometimes they might just hear about what your politics are all about and say, hey, we got to get that guy, And everybody wants to know what LeBron thinks. And certainly, I'm sure he did a good job as a surrogate.
And that speaks to how athletes are these influencers in our society, maybe now as much or more than ever. And we saw a bunch of social media posts from a lot of those athletes over the past 12, 24 hours. LeBron James specifically talked about having hope for the future and sort of continuing on with his message. You had J.R. Smith here, we see, saying, gee, what am I going to tell my little girl? He was wondering. You have CP3 saying, I got to wake up and go harder. You have Jabari Parker feeling very concerned about racism in America. And then Kevin Love, you finish up with saying, hey, I wish Coach Wooden were still alive, which I'm sure is a sentiment that you share as well.
Talk about leadership. We got some good leadership there. But I think, look, I'm a Black American. I'm a Muslim, and for me to wake up this morning and find out that my country has embraced a racist as the commander-in-chief, that bothers me. It makes me wonder about where I live and what it really is all about. It puts a lot of questions in your mind, and I think that really is. What we all dealt with this morning and what really is going on here. We really want to know about that.
So what should these athletes and some of the guys I mentioned were guys who have grown in their political activism over the past 2, 3, 4 years. we've seen this rise of the activist athletes, maybe hearkening back to more of the beginning of your era. And I think some of them are sort of struggling, maybe publicly online, with what to do right now. Tracy, if you were LeBron James, if you were Chris Paul, what would you do sort of with yourself now that you have been politically activated the way these guys have?
I think, you have to continue to be that way. Just because things didn't turn out the way that a lot of us wanted to, we have to continue to unite. We have to continue to inspire our youth and let them know what they're still capable of doing. Be an inspiration to our youth. We can't look down just because we disagree with, what transpired last night. And we just got to continue to progress and move forward.
And let's leave even last night's election aside. With that rise of athlete activism, we've been talking about it for months here, and I think they just showed the picture, Kareem, of you in that famous summit with Muhammad Ali in 1967. Carmelo Anthony used that photo at the beginning of the summer when he was sort of describing his desire to become more active and calling on other athletes to become more active. We saw Colin Kaepernick with his anthem protests and the NFL players who followed along with him. What have you thought as you watched, say, Carmelo make this statement, the guys up at the ESPYs, Kaepernick? What have you watched as you watched? I thought, have you watched that unfold?
Well, I'm really happy to see that the understanding of what you have to do in order to participate has started to spread amongst professional athletes. I'm glad to see them becoming involved. Michael Jordan has woken up from his long sleep. He's given some money to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and, is getting involved. And we all have to be involved in this because we all live here. This is our country. All the people that voted yesterday are our fellow citizens. We have to figure out how to communicate with them and make sure that they understand what our issues are. And that takes. And
I like to add this, that, I appreciate, these guys, being the influence that they are speaking out, speaking their mind, and speaking to parts of society that may not be paying attention to, the politics.
Right, not as politicized. They're reaching people in different corners than, say, maybe a typical viewer who's watching CNN every day, maybe someone who's watching ESPN every day instead.
Absolutely.
Is a different kind of person, so that's important too. You mentioned Michael Jordan. I'm not going to let that go completely. We're going to break first. What did you think over the years as you saw him purposely decide not to get involved, and then recently when he did?
Well, I thought it was unfortunate that he was so reluctant to engage in being involved politically, because that is his right. He's an American. He has the First Amendment says he can say whatever he wants to say, and have an opinion. So for him to not want to do that just because he was worried about his business, I thought that he really was limiting himself. And I'm glad that he's not doing that anymore. He has his opinions, and we'd like to know what they are. A lot of people would. And I'm glad to see he's taken the initiative to go out and start talking about these things, because people want to know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Did you ever talk to him about it over the years and try to get him involved? Because you were so involved yourself.
I haven't spoken to Michael, I think, since he retired.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow. Are you serious?
Yeah. Our paths go different places. You retire, you start to do the things that you always wanted to do, and often you don't see the guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tracy, we got to get that on the calendar for the jump next year. We're going to have that panel going. Absolutely. All right. We got to stop there, but we have so much more to come here on the jump. And when we return, I'm going to ask Kareem about the, quote, demise, and I put that in quotes, of the big man in basketball. Has that been overstated? You might want to stick around for that one.